once had a happy family. However, one day, her journalist father mysteriously committed suicide. At the scene, the body of her father's colleague was also found, stabbed multiple times. Her father's DNA was on the murder weapon, leading the police to conclude he killed his colleague and then himself out of guilt. Tachibana Sa and her mother didn't believe he was capable of such actions and repeatedly requested the police to reopen the investigation. But the case was closed, citing conclusive evidence. Thus, Tachibana Sa became known as the murderer's daughter. At school, she was bullied and ostracized for this reason. Unable to bear the stares, she often hid in the restroom. Even there, classmates tormented her. She returned to class covered in mess, her desk vandalized with abusive words. Amidst the bullying, a girl named Rina took Tachibana Sa away. Rina, a wealthy heiress, believed Tachibana Sa's father was not a murderer. Recalling his patience and tolerance when interviewing at her father's company, Tachibana Sa was grateful for Rina's support, and they became inseparable friends, sharing lunches and piano practice. When girls tried to humiliate Tachibana Sa with red ink, Rina defended her, pouring the ink on herself instead, causing the others to scream in shock while Rina smiled angelically at Tachibana Sa. The next day, when Tachibana Sa was targeted for a prank, Inoue, the popular senior, stepped in to help, which touched her. However, Rina warned her to stay away from Inoue, calling him bad news. Trusting Rina, Tachibana Sa distanced herself from Inoue. One day, Rina suddenly asked to meet Tachibana Sa in the piano classroom after school. When Tachibana Sa arrived, she found Rina covered in blood, holding a bloody pair of scissors, with the piano teacher lifeless in a pool of blood. Trembling, Tachibana Sa asked Rina what had happened. Rina kicked her down. It turned out the piano teacher had merely commented that Rina's playing lacked emotion, prompting Rina to kill her. Rina planned to frame Tachibana Sa as the murderer who committed suicide out of guilt. Remembering her father, Tachibana Sa accused Rina of being involved in his case. Rina didn't respond, but smiled angelically, stabbed Tachibana Sa again, placed the knife in her hand, and set the classroom on fire. The next day, media reported Tachibana Sa as a high school student who killed her teacher and then committed suicide. However, Tachibana Sa survived, fueled by hatred for Rina. 14 years later, she had undergone plastic surgery, changed her name and identity, and sought revenge. By then, Rina had become a famous pianist and a new mother. Tachibana Sa applied to be her nanny, unrecognizable to Rina. With an impressive resume and deep knowledge of classical music, Tachibana Sa impressed Rina. Although Rina disliked her beauty and subtly rejected her, citing lack of experience, Tachibana Sa argued she had all necessary childcare certifications. As Rina went to soothe her crying child, Tachibana Sa surveyed her home, pained by Rina's happy photos, mourning the life she could have had. Suppressing her rage, Tachibana Sa deliberately brought up the high school murder case. Rina shockingly did not remember it. Rina dismissed her for lack of experience, but at that moment, the child began crying uncontrollably, and Rina could not calm him. After checking, Tachibana Sa discovered the child had a food allergy. She immediately contacted a pediatric specialist she knew, and the child quickly recovered after treatment. That evening, Rina told her husband about the incident. Her husband, Inoue, the senior from school, praised the nanny for noticing the allergy, highlighting her reliable skills. He suggested Rina could safely hire Tachibana Sa. Convinced by her husband, Rina called Tachibana Sa to start work the next day. Tachibana Sa's plan for revenge had begun successfully, with Rina unsuspecting and trusting her with the child. Once Rina left the house, Tachibana Sa began her search for clues in the study of Rina's father, Kurokawa. Her research had shown that Kurokawa had taken leave on the days her father was murdered, and the day she and the piano teacher were burned. She suspected Kurokawa might have been Rina's accomplice. However, she only found books on criminal psychology and sociology in the study and was caught by Kurokawa before she could investigate further. Fortunately, Rina returned at that moment and explained that Tachibana Sa was the new nanny, who hurriedly claimed she was just looking for childcare items. Rina seemed not to delve deeper, but Kurokawa later advised Rina to be cautious with Tachibana Sa. Rina responded with her signature angelic smile and said not to worry, as they could cut it off if necessary. Despite her reassurance, Rina had cameras installed at home for the child's safety. That night, Tachibana-sa reported her findings to an ally who believed there was no substantial evidence in Rina's house, and the installed cameras complicated Tachibana-sa's movements. He suggested she look for clues in Kurokawa's office instead. The next day, Tachibana-sa arrived at Kurokawa's office. After searching, she found a locked cabinet and broke it open using a mop. Inside were many documents, including a psychiatric evaluation of Rina at age 10 and a CT scan of her brain. Shockingly, there were several research journals written by Kurokawa detailing each of Rina's murders. While Tachibana-sa was stunned, she heard Kurokawa outside. She quickly hid, and when Kurokawa entered, she knocked him out and tied him up. When Kurokawa awoke, Tachibana-sa revealed her identity and how Rina had destroyed her family. She accused him of being involved in Rina's crimes. Kurokawa pretended to be ignorant, so Tachibana-sa poured a bucket of gasoline on him, threatening to burn him if he didn't tell the truth. Panicked, Kurokawa admitted to covering up for Rina but denied involvement in the murders. When asked about Rina's motive, he claimed ignorance but expressed being tormented by her murderous nature, considering himself a victim. Tachibana-sa angrily declared herself the true victim. Her life turned into hell by Rina. She then forced Kurokawa to record a confession with a voice recorder. However, she didn't rush to hand the evidence to the police, intending to torment Rina gradually and make her suffer immensely. An unexpected complication arose. Rina's husband, Inoue, who was Tachibana-sa's first love in high school, seemed to recognize her. He felt her demeanor resembled his love from 14 years ago. Fortunately for Tachibana-sa, her appearance had drastically changed due to plastic surgery. She explained that perhaps the resemblance was because she and Inoue came from the same hometown. Rina came downstairs to greet her husband. Inoue mentioned his suspicion to his wife, causing Rina to instantly lose her smile and stare intensely at Tachibana-sa, with a fierce murderous intent in her eyes. Upon hearing they were from the same hometown, Rina quickly invited Tachibana-sa to stay for dinner. With no excuses left, Tachibana-sa had to dine awkwardly with her enemy. At the table, Rina and Inoue appeared very affectionate with their child. Learning Rina would be on a business trip for a week, Tachibana-sa watched the family, reminded painfully of her own family's once happy dinners, deepening her hatred for Rina. Tachibana-sa had evidence that could send Rina to prison, including a video recorded by Kurokawa after Rina killed the piano teacher and tried to burn Tachibana-sa. In the video, Rina described her actions against Tachibana-sa. Unable to watch further, Tachibana-sa shut off the computer, thinking that simply handing Rina over to the police would be letting her off too easily. She wanted Rina to experience the despair and pain of losing a loved one. Her ally suggested they use Rina's business trip as an opportunity to release negative information about her on social media, distracting her so much that she wouldn't be able to focus on her home. This would give Tachibana-sa the chance to kill Rina's beloved child. The next day, as Rina left to shoot a commercial, she encountered a homeless man collecting bottles. Wanting to appear kind, she helped him, but he was ungrateful. Rina maintained a smile, but remembered the slight. Meanwhile, Tachibana-sa's ally had already released the damaging information about Rina. Upon receiving the news, Tachibana-sa acted. She used a potted plant to block the camera, then picked up a pillow to smother the child. Suddenly the phone rang. It was Rina calling to check on her child, but the camera was blocked by the plant. Tachibana-sa had no choice but to move the potted plant, missing her chance to kill the child. Meanwhile, Rina's agent saw a viral video exposing Rina's rant about never using the cosmetics she endorsed due to their chemical additives, though she pretended otherwise for the endorsement. The leak quickly led to public backlash, termination of her contract, and a lawsuit from the cosmetics company. Devastated by the loss of her job, Rina calmed down and began to analyze the video to identify the leaker. It had been secretly filmed at a cafe while celebrating with friends after a shoot 6 months earlier. Suspecting one of her close friends, but unable to pinpoint who, she dismissed the idea of harming them all. Frustrated, Rina decided to vent her anger by killing the homeless man who had ignored her during the day. After work, Tachibana-sa discussed the day's progress in her revenge plan with her ally. It was revealed that she had filmed the explosive video after tracking Rina and pretending to be a part-time cafe worker. With Rina facing public outrage and legal challenges, her ally urged Tachibana-sa to quickly kill the child, to which she agreed. The next day, Rina made a tearful apology, hacked into the camera system, and displayed a loop of Tachibana-sa comforting the child. Deceiving Rina, Tachibana-sa took the child to the bathroom, intending to drown him. However, she found herself unable to go through with it, and ended up holding the child and crying, apologizing to him. Her plan had undoubtedly failed again. Rina returned to work happily and visited her husband's flower shop, hoping he would close early to celebrate her successful comeback. However, Inoue had just received a large order and could not leave. Rina went home feeling depressed, and the child's continuous crying only worsened her mood. Frustrated, she furiously chopped on the cutting board. Upstairs, Tachibana-sa heard the noise and checked the surveillance camera. She saw Rina walking towards the child with a knife in hand. Tachibana-sa immediately rushed downstairs. Luckily, Rina's husband called just in time, preventing Rina from harming their child. Tachibana-sa, who was nearby, broke out in a cold sweat. True to her nature as a murderer, Rina was even ready to kill her own child. This revelation forced Tachibana-sa to rethink her plan for revenge. They now needed to find Rina's true weakness. Realizing there was no need to harm her child, they speculated that Rina could have killed the child and made it look like an accident, but she didn't, likely to avoid being labeled a negligent mother. Hence, she hired a nanny, presumably to pin the child's potential death on the nanny. The next day, Tachibana-sa went to work at Rina's house, where she placed a hot iron near the child and stepped away to test Rina's reaction. True to form, Rina tried to use the iron on the child as soon as Tachibana-sa left, but Tachibana intervened. Thwarted, Rina left the house after receiving a phone call. Tachibana-sa took this opportunity to search the house, trying to find what Rina valued most. She realized that neither money nor fame was of utmost importance to Rina. She then considered Rina's husband Inoue, but doubted that a woman willing to kill her child could deeply love her husband. Just then, Inoue returned home from work, hurriedly checking on the child. Clearly, a loving father. This scene led Tachibana-sa to a realization. She remembered a day when the child had started to roll over. She joyfully told Rina, whose indifferent response was not that of a caring mother. However, when Inoue came home, Rina pretended to be thrilled, sharing the news with him, and even suggesting they buy a cake to celebrate. On their way, Inoue and the child were suddenly hit by a motorcycle. Rina's first reaction was not to check on her young child, but to rush to Inoue's side. Tachibana-sa finally realized that Rina truly cared about Inoue. The child was merely a tool for her to gain Inoue's love. Tachibana-sa initially wanted to kill Inoue to hurt Rina, but she felt that this was not the most painful form of revenge. The best approach was to show Inoue Rina's true nature as a murderer. Soon, an opportunity arose when Rina invited her friends over to celebrate a new endorsement. One friend brought goldfish as a gift, which sparked an idea in Tachibana-sa. She quietly discussed with Rina's friend about organizing a surprise for Rina's birthday, and the friend liked the idea. Tachibana-sa signaled her to get Inoue's approval. Excitedly, the friend shared the plan with Inoue, and Rina saw them talking. Rina confronted her friend, asking what they discussed in the yard. The friend lied, saying she was asking about which flowers to give. Inoue helped cover up the lie, easing Rina's suspicions. However, Rina's murderous intent did not fade. That night, she put the goldfish her friend had given into a blender. Tachibana-sa, who was observing, recorded this cruel act on her phone, thinking this video would reveal Rina's true nature to Inoue. But when she showed the video to Inoue, he was not surprised. He explained that Rina's strange behavior was due to stress, and although it seemed cruel to others, he understood and empathized with her.